Hi everyone, this video is slightly different. In the background, I've been preparing for working on a project that will hopefully start arriving in the later half or quarter of the year. Some kind of animation project, but well, you know how things go. That might be hit or miss. But today I wanted to talk about creativity again and some of the lessons I've learned about learning new creative skills. If you've been around for a while, I know that some of you really enjoy the creative discussion videos, especially in this age of uncertainty, because they sort of help people to not feel alone or ground them in their journey of learning and discovery. So in this video, the first half is going to be me talking about my approach to learning making music, and the second half is going to be more of a discussion about the psychology of it. And it's quite important to watch the first half before watching the second half, just because it's giving a live demonstration about how, people don't have to approach learning creative skills all in the same way. So enjoy the video. So welcome to the audio-visual workspace. This is where I've been working on things for, unspecified project F or TCS, different names for it. Occasionally this is where I'll sit in the evenings and just play little things for people in the evenings on Discord. I spend a lot of time playing mostly with the piano, and I've been kind of following an approach that I've had with other creative things in the past, which is where, because I've got a sort of pathological demand avoidance, I hate pre-existing theory for things, and I hate being told how to do things. So when it comes to something like the piano, I just want to kind of learn it myself without paying much attention to music theory. Now, I know music theory is much more than piano, but I have found it quite interesting. And something that's happened is I find that I hate all of the regular keys, but I've gravitated towards the sharps and the flats. So for example, if I just do a tiny little 2-note thing, that's on the wides, and you can hear there's some sort of residual brass going afterwards. It's kind of lingering. So that's, and then if I move to, I find I prefer that second sound much more. There's something about it that resonates more. And I find if I try and do the same thing on wides, it just doesn't really resonate anywhere close to the feeling. I mean, you can do stuff with that, but I just prefer the sound of the sharps. One thing you might kind of hear in the background is, for the particular feelings that I'm finding quite comfortable, I've been mixing in a few different instruments at the same time. So I mentioned about there being brass, but there's also bell tones. So you can hear a chime of a bell in there when I give it enough velocity. I really like that because, here in the UK, it just kind of felt like, history kind of sending a signal forward. So even though things might get a little bit sci-fi, as I keep compounding things into this, you can hear a little bit of synthetic and a little bit of brass that kind of hangs on in there. I like the idea of having a little bit of sound that goes into the future and a little bit of sound that goes into the past. So you just kind of get something coming from both directions. And it's just something that you could increase the influence of, depending on what kind of sound you're doing. So you can see one of the many things I've got here is analog brass and winds by Native Instruments. A lot of people have used this. And additionally, we've got the BBC Symphony Orchestra, another very common, very popular thing. If I can get them both active at the same time. The bass being used has been transposed, so it occurs more in the lower tone. So if I leave one note running, we'll be able to hear the wind fluttering, and I can bring in a little bit more of a synthetic just background note. And you can hear a bit of a wobble in there as well. So one thing I want to listen to is if I have Afterglow down. Oh, it's kind of funny that this is called Afterglow, given that one of my products is Afterglow. But if we listen to the higher note here, it's kind of simple. hangs on. You get like a kind of ominous undertone in there. If I throw this in, then it changes. And you get much more of like a kind of sci-fi linger with the note. Now, maybe that's a bit over the top if you were doing like a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's the kind of thing that can be turned on and off as needed. But really, that's just like completely optional. But it does also go to show that the same set of instruments can be used to do weird things as well. Like slightly disturbing tones in the background. Like that. And again, because some of the instruments only work within like the lower section of the piano, particularly for like the BBC orchestra ones, it means that the one end of the piano sounds completely different to the other end. So on the lower end, we've got more kind of orchestral sounds, including the bass. If I actually bring the bass back in, hang on. There we go. So we get really deep piano and the bass. And that can also be like pitch modified as well. That sounds a little bit like Blade Runner 2049, hang on. So you can do what sounds like that. But then like we said, the bells, they only occur in the middle section of the piano. So you're not going to hear them on the higher end. So it's slightly more sci-fi, slightly more orchestral on one end, and then again bells in the middle. Now I find that more interesting because for me it means that as I'm like messing around with it, I'm kind of getting surprised as I'm doing it, which I like because my approach to doing things creatively is always a bit more chaos than order. Like we said about, demand avoidance, trying to resist structure and predictability a little bit. And I think that makes things interesting. So let's just mess around quickly and see what we can do. I tend to come up with things that sound nice and then record them like on video, and then I forget them very quickly, which is really annoying. I don't always record them down in the digital audio workspace like Ableton, but at least when I get them on video, I know that they're there and then I can get rid of them. But let's mess around. So that's how I do it. Or rather, you can see what happened there. Played with a few notes. Come up with some kind of pattern that's like repeatable. And I'm not thinking too much about like the timings of things, because that's, super important thing in music theory. I'm just vibing it out. So we'll do an even simpler one. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll get the timings wrong a little bit. And then I'll think, where could I put my hand? Like, while doing this, my other hand. And I like to do, like, if they're even called chords, that are like kind of 4 notes across, because I kind of just like the sound of those. If they were 3 notes, it'd be like this. So where was I? So I think 4 notes on the other hand, and I'll do it on one of the marks. So up, down, up, down. So I'll do it on down. Up, down, up, down, up, then you can always just try and like slightly change a note once or twice, or move things further along or further back. And the velocity is really important as well, because you really want to get like some soft notes in there. This probably sounds really strange for people that are like experts at piano, but hopefully it's interesting. Because to me, it's a little bit like, you know, a Rubik's Cube. I've always thought that the fun of a Rubik's Cube is trying to figure out how to do it yourself. And this reminds me of when I was in school. There's all these kids that wanted to like show off, like really try hardy how smart they were by doing a Rubik's Cube as quick as possible. Because, you know, the night before they'd watched a video on it. Because the only really important thing for them was to show off. But for me, when I got my hands on one, I didn't do any of that. I just twisted it around, and then I figured out a pattern for how to get, you know, all the colors on one face. And I wrote a little note for that. I was like, okay, well, if you notice this is here and then this is here on another face, then you'll be able to do this to get, you know, like a full-on face. After I had done that, I thought, okay, cool, I can carry on or adapt that to finish the Rubik's Cube. But then when the idea of finishing it kind of got into my head, I got bored of it very quickly. And I find that that's a really interesting thing that kind of separated me from my other friends, is that if we both look at a puzzle or like a creative skill to learn, we can see it in completely different ways. And a lot of people want a structure and they want an end goal, but I don't find structure or end goals enjoyable at all. So I like the chaos. I don't necessarily like recording down the notes in one go because I have trouble editing it afterwards, and the more I sit and analyze it, the worse it feels. So I like to just kind of do it improvised all in one go. And the idea of having an end point also kind of makes me feel like, oh, what's the point in doing anything if there's an end point to it, you know? You know, I've always liked music or loved music, but one of the things that always put me off it is there have been so many people in the past who I haven't gotten on with, who were just like so focused in on music that I sort of associated the idea of doing music with those personalities. And in that way, it felt a bit gatekeepy, like it was being gatekept behind certain personalities. But then I think back to the whole Rubik's Cube thing, and I think, actually, sod that. I really have fun like finding sounds, like just something that just resonates in my brain. And I know it won't resonate in other people's brains, but still, it's just... And it reminds me of something that I showed off a little while ago. I do physical 2D artwork in real life, right? But it's not the kind of thing that people would be interested in. Or rather, it's not the kind of thing that I think most people would be interested in, because it's just like chaos. So what this is just like doodles and scribbles. They're not supposed to be good looking. They're just like literal historical records of chaos going on in the mind when working on things. But the thing is, I have no interest, like absolutely no interest in doing impressive or realistic like 2D artwork. If I was interested in it, I would actually probably enjoy the process of learning it. But because I can just do incredible things in 3D, I think that's taken over the technical part of the brain. And now like all the things that are just for fun is just like ordering chaos and just finding some calming feeling in that. And I feel like music fits into that category a little bit. So I think an approach for me to take is when applying this to projects, like if I want to use this in projects, the solution for me is probably not to structure things and be like, oh, I'm going to make a song or a track for this piece of footage. It is instead to take what I've always said, you know, about productivity, is to take the artist reporter model where I just have fun and just make anything with no time limit, with no structure limitation for a few hours. And then afterwards, I look at that and then I go, that bit will do. Does that make sense? etc., etc. So just like improvise, go. And I find that improvisation, I mean, kind of looking back, it's just obvious because I've always trended towards improvisation. Even when it comes to doing videos and stuff, I found out very quickly that scripting videos was just not it. However my brain works, it is a ruthless procrastinator, and if there is a clear vision of what needs to be done, it won't get done. But did you see I'm also growing vegetables? I realized that my courgettes weren't getting enough light, so I've been giving them like a bit more light during the day. But anyway, maybe I should play the piano to them, like out on the speakers a bit more. So yeah, it's a bit weird talking about this stuff because it's not really something easy to show. It's more of like just a discussion point about creativity. And I've done a lot of discussions about like creative psychology in the past. I know that a lot of people take music very seriously and very structured, but I just want to use this as an example to mention that, hey, people want to do things in different ways, and that resonates everywhere. Even recently, in recent discussions about, business structure and business models and having the freedom to do things the way you want to, which is really just, the core philosophy of Blender. And I've gotten a fair amount of crap for basically standing up for that belief. There might be some smart people watching this. I'm imagining particularly parents of children who might have had the thought cross their mind while watching this. And well done if you did, by the way. The things I've been describing are somewhat recognized as autistic traits, particularly the idea of pathological demand avoidance. And you would not be wrong. But I've always had an interesting relationship with the idea of autism. We've had other people in the community getting diagnosed. I don't like labels, but I will say that every single member of my close family that has gone through a diagnostic pathway has been diagnosed with autism. And I have looked back through the records, and it's kind of funny that one of my granddads, it used to be a running joke about how when he had an injury, he banged his head on a rock somewhere in a coastal area of Cornwall. When they went to do a brain scan, they said that a chunk of his brain was missing. And the family didn't really know how to interpret that. The doctor, in the kind of, limited wisdom for the time, said, oh, it's occupying the space that's usually associated with humor, which doesn't really make sense to me, like as a kind of biomed student. But everyone just kind of laughed it off like, ha 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 ha, Granda doesn't have any humor. Cut to me in the modern day. I'm learning more about medical stuff because it's part of my interest. I'm reading an interesting book by Temple Grandin, The Autistic Brain, and it's making mention to all the different markers that may appear in a brain, like kind of physiologically, that may be an indication of a sign of autism. One of the things you learn really quickly is there is no single sign. There is more of a constellation of possible signs, and collectively together they may be able to be used as a marker, but it's very much not so clear-cut as, oh, this is definitely autism. Some people can have the markers and not have it, and vice versa. But one of the really important things I learned was that for some people with autism, a particular marker can be seen where ventricles, which are fluid-containing areas of the brain for cerebrospinal fluid, can be extended and grow into other areas. When I think back to the family story of the fluid-filled void taking over part of his brain, I thought, oh, I see. Because there had always been kind of discussions about it for like other behavioral reasons. He's quite unique, that granddad, and he used to work in the Ministry of Defense. In fact, that entire thread of the family has been very technically minded and in some ways military and engineering oriented. Even my dad now is the special effects supervisor for HBO's Harry Potter. He's very creative, very technical minded. And when I try and interpret how I approach things creatively, I now look back through the kind of heritage, as it were, and think, I see. I think I've adopted something. Now, that would have been interesting enough as it was, but then my mum got diagnosed as autistic. And my mum is where I get, a lot of my kind of health conditions from, particularly the blood-related ones, among other things. So there's like one family line has a particular like provenance for cognitive difference, which may be like, one type. And the other side feels like a different type because when I look back through, the heritage there, it's very different behaviorally. So I've got a brother, he got assessed. And then he came out positive. But me and my brother, we're not the same. Like, we didn't come away with the same type of brain. And they keep asking me to go through like a diagnostic pathway. But the thing about me is I don't really like labels or want a label, and I don't really need like the help that say, when I was a kid, I probably would have needed the help. I did struggle in primary school. I couldn't pay attention to anything. I couldn't really understand anything. I did have friends, but I was a bit of a loner. Actually, in some ways, I developed way faster than the other kids, but in like the kind kind of cognitive department, I was really behind. That was until the age of about 11 or 12. And then pretty much immediately, everything flipped on its head. I went from like bottom set to top set. Teachers found it weird. They were getting me to do IQ tests, but still, with whatever demand avoidance I had, I kind of hated the idea of revision and all that. So I didn't really revise for exams. And then I came out, I think it was second in the school in terms of grades for that particular year group, things like GCSEs. So I guess I'm just putting this in to say that everyone's different. Hopefully this gives you some context when I talk about things on video that, a lot of people find it weird. They say, oh, you should do things this way, you should do things that way. And hopefully now you understand why I put my foot down so much when people try telling me to do things a certain way. But it doesn't matter. So, I don't know. I'll play you out with something. All right. See you around.